Good morning, everyone. The last two lectures that we had yesterday, the PDF is still pending to be sent for those lectures, correct? Okay. Okay. I forgot it last night. I just recollected it that I still have to send over the PDF of those two lectures. Fine, and send everything together. Now, yesterday we finished with any doubt from yesterday's session? If you got a chance to read anything from the textbook, any doubt from the yesterday's session? Okay. Now, this, Varun, you have a doubt? Okay, okay. Yeah. No problem. Take your time. Yeah. Acha. Now, this chapter is one of the difficult chapters in assessment. There are 4 types of assessments. This is the 3rd type. And this is difficult because of the pure interpretation skills that you require for understanding this chapter. The range of sections here, they start from section 147 and it goes on up to section 152. 147 is at times also called as the charging section for this type of assessment. Basically, 147 describes the situation where this assessment can be invoked, on what basis this assessment can be invoked. What is the situation which will lead to this type of an assessment, and on in what manner will this assessment be applicable. From section 148 to section 152, this is the procedural part. These are your procedural aspects, the procedure that you need to follow as the assessing officer to be able to perform this assessment. So stuff like sending of notice, time limit for sending of notice, sorry, you have to obtain approval, you have to obtain sanctions from the commissioner to be able to do this type of an assessment, and various other concepts, but all relating to the procedure part. After section 152, we have section 153. 153 talks about time limits for completion of assessments. we've already seen 153 subsection 1. Time limits for completion of assessment. The first 3 assessments are covered in section 153. In this section 153, we are going to basically cover stuff from subsection 1 to subsection 6. Six different subsections, but 153 I will actually take up as a separate chapter. It will require a separate lecture, probably not the full 2 hours, but we will need a separate, probably not the full 3 hours, but we'll definitely need about 2 hours of session to discuss section 153 independently. It is that detailed. So while I'm dealing with this chapter academically, in income escaping assessment, I will focus on these sections from 147 to 152. And then we'll pick up section 153 separately and discuss the time limits. Achha, why this section? Why this income escaping assessment? Chalo, I'll start off with something very simple. Next 1.5 hour is really very tough to deal with. A lot of interpretation involved. I'll make you read a lot of stuff. So keep the PDF of the textbook that I have given to you handy with you in your mobile device or in any other device where you can read it, in a convenient manner. Please ensure you keep it handy. There will be many occasions where I'll give you something to read. I will want you to interpret it. I will not impose my interpretation on it. I will want you to read a particular paragraph and interpret that stuff. Basic common sense question for justifying this type of an assessment. Tell me, if I am talking about, say, we'll stick to our year, assessment year 2021. No, go to a past year. Chalo. Assessment year 17-18. Tell me, what is the last date to issue, would be the wrong word, to serve the notice under section 143.2. Okay, guys, let's try making an effort. What is 143.2? Notice for regular assessment. What is the time limit for this notice? Six months from end of the assessment year. 6 months from end of the financial year in which the return of income is filed. Let's assume my return of income is filed in the year 17-18 itself. So my 6 months will be 30th of September 2018. Acha, what is the last date to complete the assessment under section 143.3? Last date to complete the assessment. Remember, it is AY 17-18 that we are trying to discuss. AY 17-18. Anybody, if you remember the time limits? No, it's not 18 months, it is 24 months. 18 months is for AY 1819. I'll put up the, give me a second please. Yeah, AY 1819, it is 18 months. AY 1718 or any earlier assessment year, it is 21 months. 21 months from end of the assessment year. So coming back, our assessment year ends 31st March 2018 plus I add 21 months. So this will be 31st March 2019, that is 12 months, plus 9 more months, that is 31st December 2019. I first count 12 months and then I count the extra. That becomes very foolproof. Now, when we say last date to complete the assessment under section 143 subsection 3, this last date to complete assessment means that the assessment order is passed, the notice of demand also has been sent, and let's say the assessee paid the tax also, paid the tax. Now, today, 12th of July 2020, assessing officer finds out that an income of rupees 70,000, I'm just taking 70,000 as a rough example, which belongs to this assessment year, which pertains to assessment year 1718, but this 70,000 was not included in this assessment, in the assessment order. It is an income for AY 1718, but the assessee and the assessing officer both did not cover it in the assessment. Why was it not covered? We'll come to the why part a bit later on. But now tell me, we are setting on what date? When is this income discovered? It is way beyond the time limit for doing regular assessment. Notice already has been served under 143.2. Assessment order also has been passed. Today on 12th of July 2020, can you give a notice under 143.2 for this assessment year, which will be a valid notice? Of course not. You cannot pass an assessment order also for that matter. So, does it mean that the government loses the right? Does it mean that the government loses the right to tax this income? So, you're saying no, government does not lose the right to tax this income, which means what you're trying to indicate is, can the government still can tax this income? And this will be a scenario where income has escaped tax. Income has escaped assessment. We have not been able to assess the income. We have not been able to include it in the assessment order. And for such type of incomes, section 147 to section 152 have been created. This can be understood as the very basic example or a basic logic behind income escaping assessment. What are the two most common assessments that we can do? What are the two most common assessments that the assessing officer can do? Tell me. Regular assessment, best judgment assessment. And now that we have seen both, we can think like this, that if regular assessment is not going to happen due to any reason, then the assessing officer will switch over to best judgment assessment. So in a way, a student can understand that for a particular assessment year, it will be either a regular assessment or a best judgment assessment. If regular assessment is not possible, then as an alternate solution, best judgment assessment is still there in the law. But what if regular assessment and best judgment assessment is all over? The time limits are also over. And after that, you find out that, oh, this income could not be taxed. Then the third type of assessment will come into picture, income escaping assessment. You know, I think some of you might remember it. If everybody remembers, it's wonderful. I was constantly saying that income escaping assessment and assessment in case of raid, they will not happen every year. They will not happen for every assessee. They will happen only in special cases. Do you remember me? I had spoken something like this. So now think, do you think every assessment year's income will escape assessment? Of course not. Do you think everybody's income will escape assessment? All of us, which we are sitting in this lecture, everybody's income will escape assessment. The assessing officer will forget to tax everybody's income. No. So for select assessment years, for certain select assessees, this section can be invoked. Which also brings me to another point. Tell me something. So section 147 to section 152 that has been created, it will not happen for every assessee, it will not happen for every assessment year, but it is a method in the Income Tax Act to tax some income which has not been taxed so far. So my question is, these provisions are for whose benefit? These provisions are created for whose benefit? Remember this. This what you're saying is something very important. Income escaping assessment, all these sections are created for the benefit of the revenue, for the benefit of the income tax department. So you will observe that since they are for the benefit of revenue, the powers given in this section are quite wide. But at the same time, because they are quite wide powers, the Income Tax Act has also ensured adequate safeguards for the assessee. So when we are going to read section 147 to section 152, at the back of our mind, we must remember that all these are for the benefit of the department. They are not for the benefit of assessee. That also means they are not for the harassment of the assessee. An assessing officer cannot reopen the case. Reopen. I hope you understand now why I'm calling it as reopening. You can look at this example. AY 1718, regular assessment is done. And now he wants to do it again. So he wants to reopen this assessment, reopen this year, and add 70,000 to the already taxed income. So that is why this is very famously also called as reopening. It is also called as reassessment. These words are very easily identifiable with the example that we have. Reopening, reassessment, it's all very much possible. These are income escaping assessment is a technical term, but in Income Tax Act itself, these words reopening and reassessment are used. So when we are saying that powers are for the benefit of, powers are very wide and this is for the benefit of department, it does not imply that the assessee will be harassed, the assessee will be harassed using these sections. There are safeguards for the assessee also, but primarily you will observe that these are for the benefit of the department. Now, let's try and Read the charging section. I'm trying to focus on the first paragraph. I'm trying to focus only on this paragraph. You will observe that this one paragraph takes up so much of time and subject to so much of controversy. If you can view it in any other device, very good, or else you can view it on the screen also, or you can look at it your device. This paragraph is very important. If the assessing officer has reason to believe I'm going to break this paragraph into bits and pieces. If the assessing officer has reason to believe, if the assessing officer has reason to believe that any income chargeable to tax has escaped assessment for any assessment year. What is the assessing officer believing? He believes that income has escaped assessment. Why does he believe this? He believes this because he has some reason for it. He may. I'm going to pick up each and every term and discuss it in detail. Step one is what I'm doing is I'm trying to read the paragraph so that I don't interpret a term independently. I interpret it in the context of the entire paragraph. So step one, I'm just basically reading the para and breaking it into parts. There is no subsection here. 147 is just first paragraph followed by provisos. Second line, he may, subject to the provisions of section 148 to 153. Just give me a second, please. He may subject to the provisions of section 148 to 153. And I already told you 148 to 152 is the procedure part and 153 is the time limit. So if he has reason to believe that income has escaped assessment, procedures and time limits will definitely have to be followed. Coming back from the second line again, he may, subject to the provisions of section 148 to 153, assess or reassess such income. Assess or reassess such income and also any other income chargeable to tax which has escaped assessment and which comes to his notice subsequently in the course of the proceedings under this section. So he may assess or reassess such income and any other income which has escaped assessment but which subsequently is noticed by the assessing officer in the course of the proceedings. Third last line, after the bold words, under this section, after those words, or recompute the loss or the depreciation allowance or any other allowance, as the case may be, for the assessment year concerned. Hereinafter, in this section and in sections 148 to 153, referred to as the relevant assessment year. So what can he do using section 152? Sorry, using section 147. He can assess, reassess such income and any other income which has escaped assessment, or he can recompute the loss, recompute the depreciation, or recompute any other allowance. This, okay, chalo. And this assess, reassess such income or recompute, etc. is for a particular assessment year. Now we've read the paragraph. Now I would like you to use the chat box. I'm expecting many answers from you, some of them wrong, majority of them right. You can refer to the PDF whenever you want. I will take you back to the paragraph again and again. To answer my questions, you are free to look at the PDF and answer them. First question. First question. 9. If the assessing officer has reason to believe, is it the same as reason to suspect? Is it the same as reason to suspect? Or I'll use a simpler word also. Is it the same as reason to doubt? Guys, come on, beta. Next 1 hour is the base for the entire lecture today, technically. No, there is a difference between the two. Reason to believe and nahi, Lavanya. He's not sure about such escaped income. No. He's not sure. That is also different. Being sure that income has escaped assessment, doubt that income has escaped assessment, or belief that income has escaped assessment. There is a difference. Okay, I'll portray it before you. He has reason to believe that, or he has reason to suspect. Now there is a difference. If he has reason to suspect or reason to doubt, then section 147 is not applicable. Then you cannot invoke section 147. For this section to apply, there must be reason to believe and not reason to suspect. Example. There is a media report that a so-and-so actor got 30 crore rupees for working in a particular movie. For example, Mr. Prabhas, say for acting in the 2 movies of Bahubali, He has been paid 30 crore rupees. And this is a media report. Now, can the assessing officer take up the media report and reopen Mr. Prabhas's case? There is another newspaper which says, no, it's not 30 crore, he's got 35 crores. So can the assessing officer take the second media report and say 5 crore has escaped assessment? I have a doubt that Mr. Prabhas has not paid tax on 5 crore. Let me reopen his case. This is not possible. This is reason to doubt. But section 147 talks about reason to believe. So there must be a belief. There must be a belief in the assessing officer. How does he get that belief? He has reasons. So he might have got some information received by assessing officer. But information received by the assessing officer is only giving him a doubt. If this information that is received by the assessing officer is verified by the assessing officer, proper inquiries are made, then once you receive the information, this is just a doubt. But once it is verified, you'll agree with me that doubt can get converted into belief. I'll give you an example. Ronak is the assessee. Yashas Academy pays professional fees to Ronak. Say XYZ coaching class pays professional fees to Ronak. Yashas Academy is in Bangalore. XYZ Academy is in Mumbai. And what Ronak has done is both these fees, they are reflected in the return of income. They are reflected in the return. But, and let's say, just for clarity, I'm saying we are talking about assessment year 17-18. Now, there is another coaching class, say PQR. This is a coaching academy, say in Chennai, which has also paid fees to Ronak. These fees are paid to Ronak. They are deposited in a Chennai bank account. And what I have done is I have not recorded this bank account in my books. I have not reflected this in my return of income for this assessment year 17-18. So fees received from Yashas, fees received from XYZ Academy, all these fees are recorded in books. Say they are deposited in Mumbai bank account, recorded in my books. Assessment year 17-18, I'll go a level better. Assessment year 17-18, return was filed. case was picked up for scrutiny also. And in the scrutiny assessment order, only these two fees from Yashas Academy and from XYZ Academy was taxed. The PQR Academy paid fees to me. What I did was I told them, open a bank account for me in Chennai and deposit the money in the Chennai bank account only. My long-term thinking was, no, long-term nahi. My devil type thinking was, I am aware that to open a bank account, you need a permanent account number. In fact, in the Chennai bank account, while I was opening the bank account in my name, I gave my permanent account number. The Chennai bank has my permanent account number, but I'm so sure that our systems in India are not that great that if a particular permanent account number is used for opening a bank account, immediately within a day or within a week, the income tax department gets a notification that, okay, a new bank account is opened. That type of a system is something that we do not have. So my thinking is very simple. I'll open a Chennai bank account. I'll not record that Chennai bank account anywhere in my books. Income received from Chennai account, deposited in a Chennai bank account. Whenever I need to use that money, I'll go and withdraw that money. I won't record the bank account. I won't record the income, the expenses. If you guys can think that PQR Academy, while it has paid the fees to me, it would have deducted TDS. No problem. I will not claim the credit also of the TDS. I want to avoid tax altogether on this income. So I have the bank statement with me. I know how much is deposited and how much is withdrawn. I also take care that there is no bank transaction between the Chennai bank account and the Mumbai bank account. I don't do this contra entry transfer from one bank account to another bank account. And by chance, if I do it also, then I manipulate my books, which records the Yashas fee and the XYZ fee. In that Mumbai bank account, I do some accounting manipulation, and I don't say it is money received from Chennai bank account or money deposited in Chennai bank account. I pass entries in cash. So if I transfer some amount from Chennai bank account to Mumbai bank account, in my books of account, I would say cash deposit. If I transfer money from Mumbai bank account to Chennai bank account, I would say cash withdrawn. Because actually it is bank to bank transfer, but accounting manipulation I'll say cash deposited, cash withdrawn. So income is not reflected in books, expenses are not reflected in books. The bank account itself is not recorded. No claim of, no credit of TDS is claimed, nothing. Now, first thing, did you understand the facts? Because I've given you too many facts in the example. Honestly, did you understand the facts? Now, Ronak's assessing officer comes to know about the Chennai bank account. I'll give you a very logical way in which this can be discovered. PQR, that coaching academy in Chennai, is subject to scrutiny or subject to some assessment for this assessment year, AY 1780. PQR was asked a question. During the year, whatever amount of fees have been paid to all the faculties, give us a list of all those fees. So a list was given. In that list, Ronak appears as one of the receiver. Now, PQR's assessing officer takes this list and tries to track down all the receivers of the fees. This list is forwarded to every assessing officer of the faculties. So there is Ronak, there is Mr. X, Mr. Y, Mr. P, Mr. A, Mr. Ram, Mr. Shyam, Mr. Albert, all of these are faculties. Everybody is paid some amount. Everybody's assessing officer gets this information from PQR's assessing officer. So even my assessing officer gets an information that Ronak has received income from this PQR Academy. Now my assessing officer goes back to assessment year 17-18, looks at the return of income, looks at the assessment order, and he does not find any income from PQR Academy. So, has my assessing officer received an income? Sorry, received an information. Has my assessing officer received an information? Okay. Information will result into a doubt. Now what my assessing officer has to do is he has to verify. He has to make inquiries before he can act upon this information, before he can use this information. He has to make inquiries. It's like, so what does my assessing officer do? Now he sends a letter to that Chennai bank account and he says, this is the person, we want information about these bank details. And so the Chennai bank account, the Chennai bank will give that information. Legally, there are sections in the Income Tax Act which permit you, which allow you to do this. Legally, it is possible. So the Chennai bank now gives information that Ronak has this account number, it was opened on this date, for this year, these are the transactions, the whole bank statement, etc. is given. Now look at what my assessing officer has. Look at what my assessing officer has. He has information that PQR paid something to Ronak. Then he made inquiries and he finds out that, okay, in the Chennai bank account, there are deposits made, there is check deposited, cash withdrawn, everything is there. Ronak also has an ATM card of this Chennai bank account. Now can he say that it is still a doubt? Now can the assessing officer, can we still say that it is a doubt for the assessing officer? Now, is it reason to suspect or reason to believe? Now, it is reason to believe. See, if you understand the difference in the two examples, my first small example was, there was a media report about Mr. Prabhas receiving a certain amount for a certain movie. This is reason to doubt. Mr. Prabhas would have shown income of 20 crore rupees. Media says it is 30 crores. Another media report says 35 crores. A third media report says Mr. Prabhas got a Lamborghini as his professional fees, a Lamborghini car for his professional fees. Media reports. Then you cannot take the media reports as the base and tell Mr. Prabhas that you have not shown income to the extent of 10 crores, 15 crores, 20 crores. Media reports will only give you a doubt, a suspicion. But if the assessing officer gets concrete information that yes, Mr. Prabhas has received some income which he has not shown. Example, he gets concrete information from the producer of the movie, from the production house of the movie, that Mr. Prabhas has been paid this much amount of professional fees. He gets information, okay, if you can imagine this, he gets information from the distribution house, the one which distributes the movies to all the theaters, that Mr. Prabhas was also going to have a share in the collection of the movie. And when you go to his return of income, you observe that it is only the professional fees that the producer has paid to Mr. Prabhas, and that has been reflected in the return. The distributor paid something to Mr. Prabhas as share in the collection, that has not been recorded. by Mr. Prabhas in his return of income. Now you will start having something more than a doubt, because now you know that the payer has paid, but you know that the receiver has not shown it. Even if you compare Mr. Prabhas's example that I took, first example, basic example, media reports cannot be taken as a base, but further inquiries made. Is it still, even after further inquiries made, is it still reason to doubt or reason to believe? Section 147 can be invoked if there is reason to believe and not reason to suspect. These three words. Bolo guys, are you clear? Okay. Okay, chalo, great. Now, if you can give me a second, please. Just a second, please. Yeah. Next thing. If the assessing officer has reason to believe that any income, I didn't write it completely on the screen because I didn't have enough space, but I hope you can agree to this, that when we write the word income, are we talking about exempt income or taxable income? It's pretty obvious that we are talking about taxable incomes only. That's why the section also says, first line itself, any income chargeable to tax has escaped assessment. 147 will not be invoked for exempt incomes. That's okay. Huh. But the important thing, income has escaped assessment. Escaped. So my question is very simple. Can the escapement be deliberate, or can the escapement be intentional? The example that I've created before you about me not receiving the Chennai income is, sorry, me not showing the Chennai income, not reflecting it, is deliberate. Deliberate hiding of income. It has escaped tax. It has not been brought to tax deliberately. But can the escapement happen unintentionally? Answer is yes, even unintentional is possible. Example. This time I am talking about discussing the word escaping. Earlier, what I was talking about was reasons to believe. Okay, think. I hope some of you remember this. There is an XYZ bank along with banking facilities. It also does the activity of purchasing shares on behalf of its clients, on behalf of the bank customers. A particular bank customer gave 40,000 as margin money. XYZ bank purchased shares for this customer worth 1 lakh. Subsequently, the customer defaulted. And so XYZ bank forfeited 40,000. Anybody remembers what is this? Anybody remembers what is this? Anybody who can remember this? I've got one answer. No, this is not IFRS ka charging section, beta. Nahi. It is a case law, yes. Whether this margin money should be deducted from the cost or should be taxed as PGBP income. This was in the chapter of PGBP charging section 28. Lakshmi Vilas Bank was the case law. Great. Lakshmi Vilas Bank was the case law in the second book. We had this case law. Okay. This is the case law. CIT versus Lakshmi Vilas Bank, 1996. I'm trying to use that case law as an example here. Forget the fact that it is 1996. Temporarily, please forget the fact that it is 1996. Just try and understand the facts, what I'm trying to think here. XYZ Bank margin money was forfeited, 40,000. What XYZ Bank did was forfeited the margin money, reduced it from the cost of shares, and assessing officer accepted this treatment. This is prior to Supreme Court giving its verdict in Lakshmi Vilas Bank case law. This event happened prior to Lakshmi Vilas Bank case law. Lakshmi Vilas Bank also took margin money from customers. Customers defaulted. Say the margin money involved was 7 lakh rupees. Lakshmi Vilas Bank purchased share for this customer costing 9 lakhs. The amount is quite frankly not much relevant. Customer defaulted. 7 lakh was forfeited and reduced from cost. But assessing officer taxed this income. Now stay on Lakshmi Vilas Bank as the assessee. Lakshmi Vilas Bank reduced it from cost, so did not offer it as income. Assessing officer taxed the income while passing the regular assessment order. So that means assessing officer said 7 lakh is your income, pay tax. Assessing officer adjusted the cost, increased the cost to the original amount 9 lakhs, but said 7 lakh is PGBP taxable. So assessing officer would have increased the income as per assessment. He would have sent a notice of demand. Now this leads to a dispute. Case went to CIT appeals. From that it went to ITAT. From that it went to High Court. And from that it went to Supreme Court. And Supreme Court gave a verdict that assessing officer is correct. So income has not escaped assessment for Lakshmi Vilas Bank. Nah. Income escaping assessment is an assessment at the end of the day. For Lakshmi Vilas Bank, we've gone into appeal right up to Supreme Court. So we are not talking about section 147 for Lakshmi Vilas Bank. Nah. Lakshmi Vilas Bank ka assessing officer will automatically say that, okay, my order is correct. Lakshmi Vilas Bank has to pay tax on that 7 lakh of margin money under the head PGBP. Now think about this bank. Think about this bank. Was 40,000. Use the chat box now. Start talking, guys. Start talking. Is 40,000 of advance money forfeited taxed as income by XYZ Bank? Offered as income by XYZ Bank? Give me a yes or no. No. Not offered to tax by the assessee. Was it taxed by the assessing officer? Now does Supreme Court say that this should be taxable? So do you realize that for XYZ Bank, 40,000 worth of margin money forfeited is income which has escaped assessment, and I hope you'll agree with me, this escapement is unintentional. It was not done deliberately, but it escaped assessment, and we came to know that yes, it escaped assessment due to the Supreme Court judgment. Not in case of XYZ Bank, of course, but in case of some other assessee. My question is, you understand this thing? Are we really bothered about why it escaped assessment? Or yes, it escaped assessment? I want you to think and answer. Are we really bothered why it escaped assessment or that it escaped assessment? The fact that it escaped assessment. Now, was it done deliberately the way Ronak did it? Or did it happen? Did it happen? Escapement happened on its own because of the Supreme Court's judgment that came up subsequently. It just happened. In my case, it just happened. So I would say the word escaped assessment can be intentional, can be unintentional. Quite frankly, it is irrelevant whether it is intentional or unintentional. The fact is, what is important is, yes, the income has not been taxed. The AO could not tax the income. It escaped his notice, it escaped his attention, whether it was done deliberately by the assessee or it just happened, but yes, escapement happened. Another question. Guys, first of all, did you understand this? What I just spoke? Escapement happened. Did you understand this? Acha. Next question that I would like to ask you is, you agree that for section 147 to happen, for section 147 to happen, for assessment to happen under section 147, there must be reason to believe. Agreed? In my example, does my assessing officer has reason to believe? Does XYZ Bank's assessing officer has reason to believe? What is his reason to believe? What is his reason to believe? This judgment itself, this Supreme Court judgment, this is his reason to believe. Bolo guys, are you clear? So like there is a Supreme Court judgment, there can be a High Court judgment, and the High Court judgment can be taken as reason to believe that income has escaped assessment. A small thing to remember, we will see it in today's lecture itself, but a small thing to remember, Supreme Court judgment is a judgment which is universally applicable throughout the country to every assessee located anywhere in India. High Court judgment follows the concept of jurisdiction. So, High Court judgment is a reason to believe that income has escaped assessment. Yes. But generally, assessing officers will reopen a case based on a High Court judgment only if the High Court's jurisdiction and the assessee's jurisdiction matches. So, if the Bombay High Court has given a judgment, then I as an assessee who is brought to tax in the Mumbai jurisdiction, that Bombay High Court judgment can be taken as a base for me and my case can be reopened. But even if the facts are identical, Bombay High Court judgment cannot be taken as the base by your assessing officer. You fall in the Karnataka jurisdiction. If there is a Karnataka High Court judgment, that can be taken as the base for you as an assessee in Karnataka, cannot be taken as a base for me as an assessee in Mumbai. So if it's a Supreme Court judgment, try and remember this please. This is how it practically works. If it is a Supreme Court judgment, then does not matter whether you are the assessee or I am the assessee. Assessing officer can take the Supreme Court judgment as the base. But if it is a High Court judgment is definitely reason to believe. Definitely reason to believe. But that reason to believe is going to be used only if the judgment and the assessee both fall under the same jurisdiction. The High Court judgment is under a particular jurisdiction and the assessee falls under the same jurisdiction.